This is Jester, and welcome. Well, most of you guys won't know me. I'll be honest with you, I don't know myself either. And it is this question of who am I that we will be exploring today. Amidst all the AAA slop and wondering if it is you who no longer loves video games, or is it the games themselves that have gone down the drain. Rarely you come across a piece of media in today's age that reignites your love for the gaming medium and brings you to a moment of epiphany that makes you realize what got you into a hobby in the first place. Mindlock the Apartment is one such game. The game slowly through the life of our protagonist, Collins, brings us on a journey of self-reflection, isolation, daily habits, and most importantly, deep introspection through which not only Collins himself has to deal with, but also the player, that is you as well. It beautifully makes the player question their own psyche, life choices, insecurities, fears that have arisen from their past and elegantly tries to show you where such a lifestyle might lead you and what alternative path one can always choose. Apologies, but from this point onwards, it will be a bit more personal and will also include spoilers. But without letting you know a bit about myself, you might not understand from what perspective I praise the game, that it struck a chord with me. So before I start, I will just say that if you want to play a game that brings you a bit closer to yourself, go ahead, stop the video and play the game for yourself, and maybe watch the video once you are finished with the game. So without further ado, a bit about myself. I'm a former hikikomori. It is a Japanese term for a severe form of social withdrawal that affects young adults and adolescents. It is characterized by people who are unable to work or go to school for months or years and are instead isolated in their home. I say I am a former hikikomori because after I overcame most of my issues in the past and the life that I led until that point, I went on to get a psychology degree, and thus my perspective about this game comes not only from my struggles portrayed by the protagonist, but also similar issues that I had to tackle in my own personal life. In an era of social media where contact with another human being is very easy, somehow being able to convey your own true self to someone else is still as difficult, if not more, compared to the previous generation that grew up without the looming clouds of social media. It has its benefit, but it also brings in self-doubts. It is very easy to fall into the loop of being stuck in a job that you never wanted to do, only to go ahead and see on social media the peak of everyone else's life, whereas you yourself are stuck in your own personal life. It could be obviously because of various reasons. For some it might be responsibility that comes with being married, for some it might be related to economic burden, for some it might be societal pressure, for some it might be parental expectations. But nonetheless, most of the people are stuck with themselves in their own company 24/7 and definitely would have at one point had a moment where they're browsing social media and comparing their lives to everyone else's, seeing how people are living their early to late 20s doing things not only they enjoy but are actually actively pursuing it. Meanwhile, most of us are questioning if we even had a dream in the first place that we actually wanted to pursue.
Yeah, hands on its way. Stupid alarm clock. Right. Light switch, where are you? Oh, Tuesday morning? Sorry, my mistake. Wednesday morning.
The game starts with the protagonist in his bedroom that looks awfully familiar to my own, with scattered socks that should have been thrown away a week before, a calendar that has no meaning because every day feels the same, and a phone being charged right beside the face that rings every morning, reminding you that it is time to wake up, only to feel the dread of having to do so. And once having done so, the daily chores of having to go make breakfast, brush your teeth, doing your laundry, showering, and then eating leftovers just so you can start your day that you aren't even looking forward to, somehow creepily feels a bit too familiar.
Before I go to work, I need to have breakfast, brush my teeth, change my clothes, feed Sparky, grab my phone, take some money for the bus, and kiss goodbye to another day of my life.
Yeah, it really does awfully look familiar to my past self, and seeing Collins portray his frustration for the life he's leading and the job he's doing hits very close to me. Once done, the game very brilliantly hits us with its first sequence, Collins' elaborate plan to drink his morning coffee without any further disturbance at work. This hit me home pretty close as well, for even though the act of drinking coffee seemed a very menial task, The mental gymnastic that Colin goes in order to not be disturbed while drinking his coffee reminded me of my own mental gymnastics that I used to do, having to get up late in the afternoon, being in a depressive mess, doing nothing in my life, and then having to go one floor down and then facing my mother and my father. The very act of facing them every day and bringing up an elaborate plan or a lie to tell them about why I woke up so late also in hindsight seemed such a menial task, but there it was every day or so, waking up planning on what to say to them and then facing them just so I could go and get my afternoon breakfast. And there was Collins, who was doing the exact same thing, bringing an elaborate plan so that he would not be disturbed by his boss or the customers while he's drinking his morning coffee at work.
I guarantee it'll ring the moment I pick up my coffee. Workplace means customer service. This isn't going to work. Maybe if I make myself look busy. I could fake a phone call. Good. Customers will leave me alone this way. Mr. Price will notice that there's no one on the line. He can trace the calls in the system. I need to do something different here. I could fake a customer call. The phone at my desk should ring now. Good. Customers will leave me alone this way. Even Mr. Price should fall for it. That's the plan. I'm ready for my coffee.
And it is from here the game beautifully through a series of events brings us to its first poetic irony. The door that leads him out of his apartment, that allows him to go to a job that he hates and continue a life that he doesn't like, is suddenly not there. Instead, all there is an empty wall. And it didn't hit me then, but after being stuck doing various puzzles around in order to move forward in the story, I realized the door is such a beautiful metaphor for freedom. For me, the metaphor is really striking. My own door has been missing for years, and the only difference is that instead of the door missing physically, it has been missing emotionally, and that there are still some days where this really still holds true. Colin struggled to navigate his altered reality, piecing together fragments of his life, ends up mirroring my own introspection and the labyrinth of thoughts that I face daily. And I think most people who once had infinite potential, but as an adult have just turned out to be pretty average, full of self-doubt, and where their life is heading towards, will surely relate to. And anyone who is stuck in their lives going through such thoughts daily, about how and why they are still stuck at a position in life where they can't really move forward, we all seem to wonder if there really is a door that is missing. A door that will lead us out of this mess that we call our mind. When I was a hikikomori, the comfort of my room felt such a safe space that I didn't think for 2.5 years about the life outside my own room, let alone about the precious time I was wasting away. I remember waking up one day and happened to look at the tree swaying due to the strong winds, and the only thing I could say was, "Wow, it is beautiful." There was another incident during my early college days where I realized I had forgotten the difference between clear sky and one full of grey clouds, because in my mind, sky meant grey, not blue and clear. My room only felt like a safe space because deep down I knew I had the freedom to walk out from it at any moment. And that even in my lowest point, I know now in hindsight that if such a freedom never existed, I really would have panicked or felt trapped just like Collins did. For even though Collins no longer would have to go to his mundane work or continue with the life he never wanted, The reality of being trapped inside his own apartment forever only shows its true horrors when it actually ends up happening to him. Most of us are stuck somewhere and we feel we will surely get out of it tomorrow, and then we go ahead and procrastinate, delay the tasks just like Collins, and are always carelessly using our precious life, which is always in the now, never in the past or the future. We end up forgetting that just like the missing door inside Colin's apartment, the window of opportunity is always fleeting. That if we are not ready, the door might be lost forever. As I guided Colin through his apartment, solving puzzles which are even tedious at some places, for example the clock puzzle, I really dislike that puzzle immensely. Such puzzles really are not fun. They slow down the pace a lot. They stop the player from exploring the interesting bits of the game, which in this case is definitely Colin's story and his personal struggles. But moving on, all of the above I talked about myself and how I can relate to Colin's story and his past choices is already done and dusted. Just like Colin can't really do anything about his own past and what led him to his current state, there is no point in crying over spilled milk. I can't cry about it either, and neither can anyone else. But it doesn't mean that we can't really change anything. It only means that we are avoiding one very important aspect of life itself. And everyone who likes to be in their comfort zone would realize this aspect sooner or later. And that aspect is fear of change. Because even though people want to change, they still don't have the courage to face that bringing in changes will also make them go out of their comfort zone. And most people are not willing to make that trade. But the game doesn't really back out from such a situation. Mindlock slowly starts putting the thought of change in mind of Collins, and that Colin has to face his fears sooner or later, and that he has to get out of his comfort zone, connect with people once again, connect with his dreams and his own childlike nature that was once full of wonders. And the game really does try to hammer it down that change is inevitable in anyone's life. Talking about change itself, in the words of Alan Watts, who is my own personal guru actually,
dukkha really arises from a person's failure to accept the other two characteristics, lack of permanent self and change. The feeling that we have of an enduring organism, I meet you today and I see you, and then tomorrow I meet you again and you look pretty much as you looked yesterday, and so I consider that you're the same person. But you aren't. Not really. When I watch a whirlpool in a stream, here's the stream flowing along, and there's always a whirlpool like the one at Niagara. But that whirlpool never really holds any water. From one point of view, change is just too bad. Everything flows away. And there's a kind of sadness in that, a kind of nostalgia, and there may be even a rage. Go not gently into that good night, but rage, rage at the dying of the light. This is the nature of change. If you resist it, you have dukkha, you have frustration and suffering. But on the other hand, if you understand change, you don't cling to it, and you let it flow, then it's no problem. It becomes positively beautiful.
we can see what change is and why avoiding it leads to suffering. But how can one not avoid change? It is such a simple concept, embrace change, but most people are unable to do it. In fact, most of you guys would have realized at one point in your lives that the simplest of things are the hardest to comprehend, but understanding it and coming to realization is still at least one step closer to implementing it. And that is exactly what the game tries to do. And for me at least, the message was heard pretty clearly. It succeeded in showing me the mirror. Mindlock does this by presenting us with a simple song.
I've been watching you for a while. You walk round in circles, going miles and miles. Are you locked in hopes? Are in fear?
even though it's funny and that such an upbeat rock song randomly starts playing amidst all the hallucination Collins is facing. Seems pretty awkward at first. The song, in very simple words, presents us the answer that you are trapped in your life's routine. Yes, it is that simple. And it also makes sense that it is why we are trapped in our own lives and are unable to face change. Because we have made a habit of actually not doing things that are required in order to move out of a place that is basically hell for us. Now obviously, just because someone wants change doesn't mean it will be smooth sailing. But just like you won't find a rose with no thorns, change won't automatically bear fruit to an easygoing life. But still, it is better to look forward to change. The question it asks to Colin and the player in silence is that, is change really that horrible compared to your current state of life? And obviously, both for Colin and to me personally, not following the change that life itself demands is obviously going to be much more thorns than roses. So yeah, change is possible. Even if we don't want things to change, they will change eventually. In fact, not embracing a change that your life demands would end up being a worse situation for you, even compared to your current state of life. Now, before I even go any further, I would like to emphasize our protagonist and his attitude really is hard to live. As a player, there were moments I would hear him bicker about things and not do the things that should have been done, and see all of his immaturity or lack of maturity. But not once did the game vilify him, presented his isolation and his journey with an odd mix of humor and pathos, acknowledging the absurdity and the pain of being trapped, whether by his choice or circumstances. And in a way, it taught me one thing once again, that how it is important that we are not demeaning ourselves. The reason in those instances I found Collins really hard to love is also the reason I find it hard to love myself as well. For instances, since the beginning, I could see myself in Collins with all his ugliness and lack of ambition. But even when clearly he was trying to change, his carefree attitude of acting as if he doesn't care and then slipping back into absurdity of his routine and habits wouldn't really sit right with me or my ego either. That how most people are just like Collins and me, who know the right thing to do but are unable to do so in one way or the other. And in the acts where they are unable to do so, they end up disliking themselves. And then we end up forgetting that we are quick to act and hate ourselves when things fail, but rarely take a moment to love and treat ourselves with respect when things do go correct. And I think most often life does go as planned, but just like the attitude of Collins, which is for almost half of the game, is one of seeing the glass as half empty, we are quick to notice our imperfections. So yeah, funny how it very gently tries to remind Colin and the player himself, while loving oneself is also very important. I myself seem to have been stuck in a very monotonous routine and wondered why I was not making any progress towards my goals and dreams. In the game brilliantly makes you realize that maybe it really was that simple. That maybe wake up and do all the chores you need to do, not because they're important, but because they are necessary, because they allow you to be in a condition where you can love yourself and take care of yourself enough that you are both in a mindset and proper physical conditions to tread the path that you want to lay for yourself. Because everyone's life is a journey to a place where no roads are laid down. And the person treading this journey has to lay down the path, brick by brick, through his own hands. Furthermore, the game also tackles one other major aspect, which is that the attitude of my path is the correct path and everyone should be following it is a wrong attitude. It shows us by introducing us the character Valeria, who clearly irks our protagonist and shows us why our way of thinking might not be correct for everyone. It may be correct for us, but not everyone. And just like every journey is a personal one, we can't really enforce our own path on someone else.
Can we chat for a minute?
Go for it, Colin.
You know my name?
Looks like it.
Don't you think you can do something more meaningful with your time?
We make our contribution to this company and it makes its contribution to society. Everything we buy is produced and managed somewhere. This is give and take. What's wrong with that?
It's wrong that we produce so many things that no one actually needs.
And you decide who needs what?
Don't give this pompous boss all your life energy.
Mr. Price may not be perfect, but don't underestimate how hard it is to be a leader. The decisions he makes on a daily basis to keep the company running deserve respect.
But you're supporting a scumbag.
He doesn't have to be his employee's best friend. He's fulfilling his role as a leader.
The game leads our Collins through further series of events and makes him see why things have gotten so bad. But it also shows us that not everyone else is to be blamed for the life we are leading currently. For example, Colin's father is to be blamed for some things, like how strict he was with Collins when he was a child, but it doesn't mean that Colin's father never loved him. The only thing is that just like everything else in life, too much of everything leads to chaos. Colin's father loved him in his own way and wanted to protect Collins from hardships that he himself as a child had to face. But he forgets that the strength he has as a man today is only achieved by the hardships he actually did face in his own youth. By stopping Collins from following his own hardships, he's creating a crutch for his own son. Meanwhile, Collins, in my own opinion, is anything but more to be blamed himself, for he blames everything on others but never tried to act in a way that would allow him to embrace the changes he wanted. In life, I've often come across people, and include myself in it, that we blame others for things even in places where we should have took up the help and took actions that lead the ship away from disaster, but we really didn't. Either we are scared or simply it is a much easier option. Blame others, because then we don't have to actively embrace changes that might come when we take complete responsibility for our own lives. And Mindlock brilliantly portrays this side of Colin's life and psyche, and in return, our own flawed selves. For example, some of you might hate your body but don't go to gym or work out at home, or wanted to explore the world but never even took the step to explore your own city. Small things make a huge difference. And it is in these small things that Collins, in his conversation with his past self,
How do you live a happy life in general?
Complicated question.
Who are you saying that to?
There's a vast sea of tips and life philosophies. They often contradict each other. Live for the day. It's cool if you're too stuck in the past or the future, but no one should make careless decisions every day that they'll regret tomorrow. Be happy with what you have. This is definitely good advice for people who are tirelessly searching for greener pastures. For others who are constantly making excuses for their dissatisfaction, this is rather difficult.
You got me. Yes, maybe everyone needs their own personal wisdoms. I'm ready to change things. But how do I get to where you are?
Maybe never.
Great.
How would you rate your current life on a scale?
On which scale?
0 is the dullest life you can imagine, and 10 is the most fulfilling.
Somewhere in the minus range.
So why stay there? Change is a roll of the dice. To love your life, there's a chance you can fall hard, of course. But if you're in the minus range, that's time to roll.
finally realized something, that most people often don't come to a moment of personal wisdom because most people don't even take enough actions that allows them to fail enough number of times where they can actually start gaining some own personal experience and thus in return also some personal wisdom. And that it is we humans that make things complex. Not every advice you hear on the internet applies to you. There is a huge difference between knowledge and wisdom. And so the game also brilliantly tells the player that sometimes one really has to take the helm and lead the ship in order to have scars, in order to have wisdom, and in order to be able to do better next time. Because what is life? It is change. And what is change? It is being able to always try once again. And our guy Collins does do it finally in the end. I wouldn't go into the ending because I still want you guys to play the game for yourself. For I still want you guys to have these moments of epiphany that I had myself when I was playing Mindlock. So I'll leave the ending to you guys to explore for yourself. So yeah, the game really did touch my heart. The game itself is flawed if you look at its puzzle mechanics. But it's the story and the characters which are absolutely brilliant. They speak to a modern audience and are much more relatable because the idea of the character and the story is very simple. But not everything has to be complex. Just like life itself is pretty simple, but the people are complex. I am complex myself. You might be too. But that doesn't mean that just like Collins, we can't pursue change. For pursuing change brings hope. And to bring hope, sometimes you need people or something other than yourself. maybe the world itself, to remind you that it is okay and that you can drop your past and move forward. So thank you to Rootcut Media, the developers of this game. You might not have created an amazing game, but you have created a meaningful one.